Yeah.
All right, y'all. We are slightly pressed for time, so I'm gonna jump in and get us started. Um, First off, my bad on giving you all of the code beforehand. Not the intent there, but that won't happen again. I promise. But hopefully, you were able to pivot, delete the code, and kind of start from scratch because that's what we were hoping for, and that's kind of like the best. That's just the best thing for your learning is for you to kind of like even when you even if you have all of the answers, like I'm sure most of you all saw, like once you deleted them and started doing it yourself, it's like, oh, like I have a lot of work to do. Even though I already saw this code, it's really hard to replicate. So even when you are doing independent challenges in the future, and say like you get through one all the way to the end, however long that takes you is fine, because one thing to mention is we don't mind if you work on these afterwards. Like we kind of like take your scores for what they are, like right after you submit your PR. But like if you take tonight to work on it a little bit, or tomorrow to work on it a little bit and work through some of the more challenging ones, we're okay with that. Like that's totally fine. Just give us like probably the afternoon from whenever it's done before you start working on it again, so that we have time to run our spec and make sure that we can like enter the scores. Yeah, but one of the things we're going to talk about today is productive struggle. And this is kind of like a great segue right after an independent challenge, I think, because I think like you have a pretty solid reference point now of like, okay, like I can probably recognize where when I was in this productive struggle or when I was in this unproductive struggle. And really, today's class is meant to try to recognize first and then pivot, and have some strategies to pivot when you recognize, oh, I'm in unproductive struggle. Like I have stopped learning, I have stopped experimenting, I have stopped doing all of the things that I do when I'm in the productive struggle and when I'm having fun and when I'm still like, eager and curious and all of that. And now I've like, it's really more about recognition with this unproductive struggle of like, oh no, I have the negative self-talk. There's imposter syndrome happening. There's anxiety happening. I've been staring at the screen for 15 minutes. Like whatever it is, there's a lot of ways to kind of like recognize this. But the biggest thing is like, struggle is okay. Struggle is going to be part of not only this program, but really your entire career as a developer. I mean, I have a very similar process to when I was interning, when I was out on the job. My process was similar, and this is part of developing a process. Today's lesson is about developing a process and recognizing as soon as possible when you are in the part of the process that leads to solutions versus when you're in the part of the process that leads to frustration and lack of progress. So yeah, we're going to talk about those two things today. To get us started, so the way today's going to go, it's a short lesson, so we're done at 3. So we're going to take like half of the lesson today will be you all in small groups, basically like looking, making a list of, hey, like this is what productive struggle looks like for me, and this is what unproductive struggle looks like for me. And then we're gonna like pivot about halfway through, while you're in the breakout groups, to, oh, now here are some ways where I can, now I've recognized this, I can call it out. Now here are some ways that I can pivot from unproductive struggle into the productive struggle. One thing I want to say is like programming is more about process than about knowing the right answer or writing perfect code. You're gonna have to have a very what's the word I'm looking for? Dependable process, something that you can go back to over and over, because the problems are always getting more challenging. The problems are generally novel. And so having a process that you can depend on is something that is really going to help propel you forward, especially in these first couple weeks. Okay, that's enough of me talking. So we're gonna do in the breakout groups. Here, let me drop the lesson plan just in the channel real quick so that you have access. And okay, so it's there. So you all will identify this productive struggle section here. So we'll take about 8 minutes to list the behaviors of each form of struggle, and you all can kind of like collaborate on that. There's the instructions here on the screen. I'm not going to read through them, but we'll take about 8 minutes for that. Then we'll take about 8 minutes to pivot and talk about how we can move from unproductive struggle to productive, or even just stop unproductive struggle. Is even worth saying that sometimes you need a break and you need to just stop doing what you're doing, because that is better than even continuing on at that point, because sometimes unproductive struggle will lead you even further away from your goal or your end solution. Yeah, that's all for that. Let me stop sharing real quick and make these breakout groups. Any questions before I kind of have y'all go into breakout groups? Cool. I want to make these kind of specific. Okay, that's good. That's good. All right, you love it when randomly I only have to change one thing. All right,
Tim,
perfect.
I love seeing your game face.
Yeah, it's focused to make these breakout groups the way I want them. All right, so there's 4 of y'all in a group, and yeah, I won't waste any more of your time. Go. Let me record. Cool, so we got everyone back. I'd love to hear from a few groups. I'll let y'all raise your hand and maybe share something, maybe like something you heard about productive struggle from productive or unproductive struggle that you heard from someone else, and then something that you took away from the conversations. Oh, there it is. Daniel, go ahead.
Um, Other strategies that I haven't really tried that my group mates did was talking it out. So someone said talking to a plant or talking to a dog. Like if you speak it out in English, it might give you a clue. Like, oh, I need to use an if statement. And
Yeah,
also writing pseudocode on pen and paper. I never use pen and paper. I have an aversion to it, but I feel like that could be productive if you're struggling.
absolutely. So that's like a combination of kind of like 3 things that I'm hearing there, which are actually in the lesson plan. It's like rubber ducking is this idea of like you're actually using a different part of your brain when you start speaking about the problem. Like I can't tell you how many times students in the basement, when we were in person, would walk up to me, be like, Tim, like I really need your help on this. Like, okay, what's up? And then they'd start talking about it, and about halfway through, they stop and they go, I know what I need to do. And then they walk away. It's like, I'm telling you, you'll do yourself a favor by rubber ducking, or even just like saying in class, like maybe a little post in the Slack channel, hey, can anyone be my rubber duck real quick? Because then even if you don't figure it out right by talking it out, you at least get some feedback from a partner. And you can say like, hey, like we can keep it quick, 5-10 minutes. And that's like something I would highly recommend. The other part that I heard from you is the idea of taking notes. Um, this is like another one where you're using kind of like a different part of your brain when you're writing it out, and you're also, part of taking notes is you're clarifying the problem, right? And so that's rubber ducking and taking notes are kind of 2 ways that we can clarify what are we actually trying to do, because a lot of times we've been working on a problem so long that, and we've gone down like so many little rabbit holes that it's easy to forget like what is actually my end goal here, like what am I trying to do? I forget what I'm trying to do, and that's totally okay. But this is when that happens, we need to like kind of like pivot into and use one of these strategies to get back on track. Cool. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Daniel. Yeah, go ahead, Luke.
Our group, we talked about pretty much similar things, but unproductive struggle was like throwing down a bunch of code without thinking about it, spending too much time on redundant code, just sort of sitting blankly and panicking without even doing anything for a little bit too long, and then overthinking the issue. But absolutely, some of the best ways to get around that were talking to people, rubber ducking, of course, taking a walk for 5 minutes or something, just trying something completely different. And then we laughed a little bit about how terrifying the nuke it goal was, to just completely start again. But like maybe keep versions, but like maybe not keep versions, because you may rely on them a little bit too much. But overall, ask for help, even if it's hard for you, even if you are afraid of being seen as a burden or anything. Ask for help.
Yeah, I love it. I heard another group actually talking about the nuke it thing. I was in a breakout group and they were like, it can be so scary to nuke it. It's like, seems like no way. And I don't want to like make y'all feel bad at all by saying this. I don't want to like offend anyone, but like your code's not that good yet. I promise. It's just not. You're brand new. It's all good to not have the best code just yet. And sometimes just rewriting it, like you will be shocked how many times you make syntax errors that you aren't catching because the error message isn't quite what you expect it to be. So if you can just rewrite the method, you might say like, I know I've got the right thing, something's just wrong. Okay, nuke it, rewrite it, and then it works and you're like, I don't even know what happened. Here's one that I've seen a lot: misspelling initialize. That can really screw things up, and it's a real hard one to catch. But if you just rewrite it and then spell it right the next time, it can be that's a great way to do it. And you can't be too attached to code, because you'll never lose anything at this point, especially by having to write it over. Like you really won't lose anything, you'll only gain from it. Cool. Yeah, let's hear from Nico.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so in our group, we talk more about our strategies to overcome, unproductive struggle or productive struggle. And one thing that it seemed to be like a common denominator was like just, taking a break and doing something rewarding. For example, like breathing or yoga, or spending time with your pet, or crying, or like, or asking for help. That was kind of like a variety of solutions that our group members were discussing during productive and unproductive struggle, or unproductive struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And the one thing that like we don't list in this, let me just share real quick. The one thing we don't list here is take a break, because you're like, it's such a vital thing that I want that to be more part of like your process. No matter if you are flying through code or not, you are going to be a better programmer just by taking breaks. Like I can't stress it enough. Your body will start to get tight the longer you're up here, and if you just change environments, I have on the job many times been like, ugh, this problem is so stupid and I just can't figure it out. And then I'll get up, I'll walk, generally go get coffee, and like just kind of like daydream a little bit, and then I'll come back to my computer and my mind is totally fresh and like ready to approach the problem with a new perspective. And so I want to definitely kind of hone in on taking a break. And then the other one that I wanted to point out here is try a different method. So a lot of times when you are in this kind of area of I don't know what I'm doing, and I can't get this to work. Like you haven't learned too much about enumerables yet, but if you just switch what method you're attempting to use, a lot of times like you can't get the solution because you're trying to use the wrong method. Like you're trying to code a solution with a method that just isn't the right method for the job right here, right now. So there are a ton of Ruby methods. You're not going to be able to learn them all and keep all of them in your head, but they are all available online with examples and in the docs. So the more comfortable you can get with trying a different method, like say, you're trying to use an each and it's just not giving you the solution that you want, you could say alternatives to .each in Ruby, and then like go on that Google search and see if you can like kind of go through some of those and get some new ideas, because you can always try something new and just see what the return value is. Okay, what does this give me? Okay, let me try this one and let me see what that gives me. And it's okay to not get it the first time, but at that point you're in the productive struggle because you're still trying things. All right, I got to get to another meeting. This lesson is super short, but I also want to highlight this one, ask for help. Remember what I said, I'll say it one more time. Y'all don't have the benefit of being in person and just being like, oh, hey, Tim. Oh, hey, Priya. Oh, hey, Danny. Like you don't have that. Like and that is part of this remote environment. So please be doing that in Slack as much as possible. So far, I haven't seen enough to ensure that the entire cohort is kind of like getting as much help as they can. I haven't seen enough in the backend channel. I haven't seen enough in the code help channel. I want to push y'all to keep asking for help and asking more. All right. Cool. With that, I bid you adieu. And the rest of the day for y'all is PD work time. We have these, like, y'all have the career journal and you have like things to do for it each week. So each week you'll have this little chunk of time to be working on that stuff, and we dedicate it so that you actually, like, it's the easiest thing to kind of like forget the PD responsibilities because you're not doing them every single day. But this is that dedicated time, and I encourage you to use it for that. All right. Yeah, that's all.